Dumb Husky and his white cat Shizun. Chapter 193. Shizun, did you marry me? In Shisheng Peak, there were three people who were considered to be the most aloof and innocent. Shuemeng, Elder Tanlang, Chu Wanning. Shuemeng had already been thrown out by the perverted gourd. Elder Tanlang was not a virgin. He was once married in his early years, but his wife had a weak body and passed away from an illness not long after the marriage. It was said that Elder Tanlang studied medicine because he didn't want to see people around him pass away due to illness. Therefore, Chu Wanning was the only option left. Elder Yuhang can definitely handle it. Yes, even if the young master can't do it, we can only rely on the young master's Shizun. Mo Ran was furious at the side, but he could do nothing. He could only stand there, seething. Unable to do anything, Mo Ran tried anyways and said to Xue Zhenyang, "Why don't I give it a try?" Xue Zhenyang sized him up and said tactfully, "Ran air, the first requirement to subdue the wine lust gourd monster is that one should have never had a lover before." Mo Ran. On the other side, the wine-colored gourd monster was already dizzy from its drinking bout with Chu Wanning. Finally, it fell to the ground where it was enveloped in thick smoke. After the smoke cleared, the wine-colored gourd monster turned into a small jade gourd lying quietly on the ground. Xue Zhenyang went forward and put the wine gourd into his kinkan bag. He said happily, "Haha, as expected of you Heng. Come, come. Deal with this wine lust gourd monster as well." Chu Wanning's expression remained as normal, but his eyelashes fluttered. He was unwilling to look Xue Zhenyang in the eye as he said, "I can't." Xue Zhenyang was stunned. Not only him but the surrounding disciples and elders were stunned as well. Why? I drank too much. I'm tired." Xue Zhenyang was not stupid. Chu Wanning was not lying when he said that he could not get drunk even after 1,000 cups. He stared at the impassive man in white until Chu Wanning became impatient. He flicked his sleeves and turned away. Xue Zhenyang suddenly understood. He was stunned for a moment and blurted out, "Yuhang, are you?" Chu Wanning's ears suddenly turned red. He angrily turned around, his phoenix eyes sharp like lightning. "What nonsense are you spouting?" Before Xue Zhenyang could say the words "no longer a virgin," he could no longer bear it. He thought to himself, how is this possible? Just who is Chu Wanning again? Yuhang of the night sky, the Baidu immortal. Who would believe that he had something like a tryst with someone else? Xue Zhenyang slapped his thigh anxiously and said, "Then, could you at least give it a try? Otherwise, it would be troublesome if we just let this monster wander around here just like this. Moreover, the skin of this wine lust gourd monster is very hard. I'm afraid that even after 3 to 5 years, I still won't be able to peel off a layer of its skin." Chu Wanning's gaze swept across the crowd. All the disciples were eagerly looking at him. Only Mo Ran felt guilty in his heart. He was somewhat embarrassed but could not hide his burning gaze as he stared at Chu Wanning. Chu Wanning cursed inwardly. He was currently stuck in a dilemma. If he flicked his sleeves and left, he was afraid that there would be more gossip in the future. He thought for a moment and said, "Then I'll give it a try." In the blink of an eye, the wine lust gourd monster sucked Chu Wanning into the stomach of the gourd. Then, it shook its head and spun around. The disciples at the Shisheng Peak did not have any doubts. They all firmly believed that if Chu Wanning went in, the perverted gourd would definitely be subdued by him. Only Mo Ran had his reservations. On that rainy night not long ago, the most innocent elder cultivator had laid on that bed in a dark inn in Vuchame town where Mo Ran's lips and teeth has touched that innocent skin. He had dirted that pure cultivator with his own hands. Meanwhile, inside the gourd, Chu Wanning opened his eyes. There was a world of its own inside the gourd. It was like a dream world. Just like the legends said, the red candles in the perverted gourd were lit high and the wedding curtain was lowered. Going forward, he saw a big bed with red plum branches. It was covered with a thick quilt, sprinkled with peanuts and red dates, felt mattress and curtains, everything was there. There was an old woman who looked like the nascent spirit of the wine-lust-gourd monster. She was standing by the door, smiling widely. She had a head of long green hair. When she opened her mouth, even her teeth were green. Chu Wanning knew in his heart that it was impossible for him to subdue the perverted gourd. He did not want to waste time talking nonsense, so he went forward and said to the old woman, "Granny, you can just send me out. You don't need me to lift the veil." The old woman said with a pleasant expression, "Hum, hum, hum." He did not expect that this old woman did not know human language. She was not as quick-witted as the wine-colored gourd monster. She didn't seem to be able to understand Chu Wanning. Chu Wanning had no choice but to sigh. He braced himself and walked to the front of the bed. There was a person sitting on the bed. Their clothes were black and embroidered with a dark dragon pattern. The lower clothes were blue and embroidered with phoenix feathers. Their feet were bare and the veil was down. Their face could not be seen clearly. The old woman walked over calmly. With a bang, smoke rose from her hand and a green jade rouille appeared. She handed it to Chu Wanning and then made an inviting gesture. Although Chu Wanning could not accept Mo Ran's appearance in a wedding dress and felt slightly disgusted just thinking about it, he remembered that he had played the role of the bride in the ghost wedding at Kaidi Town. He also felt that Mo Ran dressed as a bride would be something interesting to see. It would be a waste not to look. Yes, that's right. Although it was disgusting, it would be a waste not to have a look. Chu Wanning stood for a moment with an ashen face. He took a deep breath and walked forward. The old woman urged, "Hum, hum. I understand. No need to be anxious." The rouille rose and the red silk fell. Chu Wanning widened his eyes slightly. "You are." From the glow of the candles, he saw a man wearing a beaded diadem looked up. Light and shadows flowed across his pale and handsome face. His black eyes were filled with mockery. He raised his chin slightly and smiled at Chu Wanning. Chu Wanning could not help but be stunned. This person was Mo Ran, but his face was a bit sickly pale. His eyes were also weak and his expression was quite strange. "Oh, it seems that in Wanning's heart, you still can't forget this venerable one." Seeing Chu Wanning in a daze, the man reached out and suddenly grabbed Chu Wanning's arm. His fingertips were cold. He stared at Chu Wanning with eyes that were ruthless and fierce, like a vulture. Mo Ran cracked open his mouth and smiled, however the smile was all teeth. "There's no warmth in it. This venerable one is pleased. What kind of mess is this?" Chu Wanning was both angry and amused. He thought that this perverted gourd had probably become stupid from being locked in the Golden Drum Pagoda. The people he transformed into were all so strange. "Let go." Mo Ran did not let go. Chu Wanning turned his head and said to the green-haired old woman, "Tell him to let go." Before he could finish what he was saying, the bride Mo Ran suddenly stood up. Chu Wanning only had time to see the pearl on his crown swayed before he felt the grip on his waist tightened and the world spun. When he came back to his senses, he was already pushed onto the golden red bed. Mo Ran leaned over and pressed down on him, wanting to pull his face. "It seems that you enjoy the sample this venerable one gives you." The man's hot breath blew on his neck. "So much so that you can't forget me." Chu Wanning frowned and dodged. He cursed in his heart that this perverted gourd's words were simply too absurd. Mo Ran had always been gentle and courteous to him. He was always well behaved. How could he possibly speak to him like this? He was embarrassed and amused at the same time, annoyed and bewildered at the same time. After dodging like this for a while, the pillow area became a mess. Suddenly, in a flash, Chu Wanning narrowed his eyes and looked at the golden red embroidered quilt. He suddenly thought of something. A dream. He was stunned for a moment. Then his face suddenly turned red. This was a dream he had. In the dream, Mo Ran was like this. He spoke harsh and provocative words. His actions were rough and unrestrained. So, this was not an illusion that the perverted gourd randomly created. Was it the shameful imagination in the depths of his heart? This thought was too shameful, and it made Chu Wanning feel extremely embarrassed. He blushed with embarrassment as he felt the tips of his ears burned red. Bayo bayo. Suddenly, a wave of heat and wetness came over Chu Wanning. As his mind drifted away, Mo Ran had already kissed his earlobe. Greedy and sinister, he stuck his tongue into his ear. Ah! Chu Wanning was caught off guard. He was so shocked by this sudden burst of stimulation that he groaned. His voice was hoarse and moist. Once the sound got out, it was even more humiliating. However, for some reason, the scene in front of him was too real. It was as if he had kissed and entangled with Mo Ran like this a long time ago. Chu Wanning was trapped on the bed as Mo Ran kept kissing his neck, cheeks, and ears. His movements were rough and hurried. He was anxious and angry. Even the corners of his eyes were red. He wanted to struggle, but he could not break free. Until this Mo Ran's lips were about to land on his lips. Bam! Suddenly, Mo Ran seemed to feel something. He was stunned for a moment. He stared at Chu Wanning in disbelief. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Chu Wanning pushed him away. A golden light flashed in his hand. Tianwen suddenly lit up and then chopped down at the Mo Ran in the illusion. Upon seeing Tianwen's glow, Mo Ran was shocked to the extreme. He blurted out, "You actually are." The willow vine fell. Sparks flew everywhere. Mo Ran was in pain, but he did not resist. Instead, he opened his eyes wide in shock. After a while, a thin cloud of smoke rose. The green-haired old lady disappeared. Mo Ran also disappeared. In the warm candlelight-lit room, there was an unfamiliar young man with blue-haired and pointy ears. He looked extremely handsome. Chu Wanning's was still fuming. He got up from the bed and grabbed his open collar. Her phoenix eyes were filled with emotion and anger as he glared at this young man. His voice was low and dangerous, like an enraged beast. He gritted his teeth and said, "Evil creature." This young man was the nascent spirit of the wine lust gourd. The spirit stared at Chu Wanning. His face was pale. He was shocked and scared. "It's you." Chu Wanning was angry. He turned his head and stared at him. "What do you mean it's you?" The spirit was so scared that he was trembling. He fell to his knees and kowtowed repeatedly, "I didn't know." He seemed to be afraid to even say Chu Wanning's name. He trembled and continued kowtowing as he begged, "Please forgive me, please forgive me." When he was young, Chu Wanning had subdued many demons and monsters by slaying them. Tianwen was famous among those demons and monsters. There was once a small demon that was so scared that they didn't even dare to move when they saw him. He didn't expect that this demon would react the same. Chu Wanning put Tianwen away. He stood up from the bed with a gloomy face. He stared at the young man who kept kowtowing. After a while, he said, "Send me out." "Yes, yes." The spirit did not dare to hesitate. He immediately chanted the incantation. With a bang, smoke rose from the ground. Chu Wanning was so confused by the smoke that he could not open his eyes. When the smoke dissipated and he could see clearly again, he found that he was back in the square in front of the Loyalty Hall. A few people immediately gathered around him. "Shizun, are you all right?" "Yu Heng, you did a good job." "Shizun, are you hurt?" The smoke smelled of the wine lust gourd monster and Chu Wanning felt a little dizzy with it. After a while, he noticed that the wine lust gourd monster had disappeared. Instead, in front of him was a small gourd with a pink leather shell. Chu Wanning thought about the illusion just now. He was still a little embarrassed and did not want to talk about it. He only said to Shui Zhenyang, "Take these two gourds and keep them in the sky-reaching pagoda." Shui Zhenyang said, right. But his eyes kept looking at Chu Wanning as he gazed back and forth hesitantly. Chu Wanning was getting scared by his stare. What's wrong? Nothing. However, Xue Zhenjiang's expression was definitely did not look like nothing. Moreover, Chu Wanning suddenly realized that aside from him, the people around him were also secretly sizing him up with curious and amused gazes. Chu Wanning turned his head. Even Mo Ran was looking at him awkwardly. His tanned face was a little red. What's? This time, Chu Wanning knew the reason before the full question of what's wrong left his lips. He lowered his head and saw his clothes. It turned out that at some point in time, probably the moment he entered the gourd, his clothes had been changed into a golden red auspicious robe similar to Xue Meng's. It was clearly a wedding attire. Chu Wanning. The news of Elder Yu Hang subduing the twin gourd demons quickly became a hot topic at Shisheng Peak. And the topic that the disciples were discussing the most was, I wonder who Elder Yu Hang married inside the gourd. Some people did not mind that their life was short as they excitedly declared, it must be a woman whose beauty is peerless as a goddess. Some felt that they had a long life ahead of them, so they winked and said, maybe it's a godlike man. One treasured his life very much so and said seriously, Elder Yu Hang probably saw the true appearance of the wine lust gourd nascent spirit. If it was anyone else, the spirit would probably be unhappy and Elder Yu Hang wouldn't have been able to subdue the monster. Everyone despised this coward who cherished his life and felt that he was boring. So, they shook their heads at him and scattered. However, at Shisheng Peak, there was a brave warrior who was not afraid of death. On this day, the weather was gloomy and the morning cultivation was suspended. Mo Ran secretly brought snacks early in the morning, and while no one was paying attention, he snuck into the Red Lotus Pavilion to stay with Chu Wanning. After the two of them finished eating, this beauty who is as peerless as a goddess and godlike man that everyone was talking about, held Chu Wanning's hand with a smile and asked, Shizun, did you marry me in that wine lust gourd? End chapter. Dumb Husky and his white cat Shizun. Chapter 194. Shizun, am I not the Ranmei that you love? Chu Wanning ate until he was full. Then he angrily replied, marry what? You're a man, aren't you ashamed to say such things? Mo Ran's smile became even brighter. Then, if you didn't marry me, did I marry you? Chu Wanning became even more furious. Not only was he angry, but he was also embarrassed. Even if he was beaten to death, he would never tell Mo Ran that the person that appeared inside the wine lust gourd was the pale-skinned Mo Ran that he had dreamt of. Nor would he tell Mo Ran how they had been entangled in each other in that dream, making love so intensely. As the saying goes, people need face and trees need bark. One of the most important things in this world was Elder Yu Hang's dignity. Thus, Chu Wanning flicked his sleeves and said, if you keep talking nonsense, you can leave now. I won't allow you to stay here any longer. This time, Mo Ran really did behave. He pursed his lips as if he was wronged, but he was still obedient. He looked at Chu Wanning with his dark eyes, then rubbed the tip of his nose against Chu Wanning's cheek. He said in a very gentle and coaxing manner, oh, then I won't ask anything. Dear Shizun, please don't chase me away. Shizun is Shizun, you don't need to add dear to it. Chu Wanning felt his heart go soft upon hearing the endearment. Even though he could not resist Mo Ran, he still pushed his head away and said with a straight face, don't call me that. But if I just call you Shizun, it's not intimate at all. Is it? Mo Ran patiently said, look, I call you Shizun in front of others. If I also call you Shizun in private, how boring would that be, right? Chu Wanning didn't fall for it. Not really. Mo Ran's first move didn't work, so he changed to another one. He pulled Chu Wanning and called, Shizun. 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 Every call was sticky sweet that it gave Chu Wanning goosebumps. In the end, Chu Wanning couldn't take it anymore and threw a scroll at Mo Ran's face. Shut up. The scroll was very thick, but it was very light and did not hurt when it hit. Mo Ran smiled as he took down the scroll, revealing the handsome face behind it. I'm afraid that I'll get used to calling you that and accidentally call you Shizun in that way even in front of others. So, let's think of another way I could address you. Chu Wanning furrowed his brows. If you call me something else, won't you get used to it? What if you call me such private name in front of others? Mo Ran sighed. Why won't you take the bait? Chu Wanning was stung by the description of taking the bait. He became more and more displeased. He lowered his head and sorted out his book, no longer paying attention to his disciple who was lying on the table and blowing at the stray hair in front of him. After a few moments of peace, Mo Ran said dejectedly, I wanted special privileges from Shizun. Shi Mei and Xuemeng both call you Shizun. I also call you Shizun. There's no difference at all. It's not too much to ask, right? I just want something different, something special that only I can call you. Chu Wanning stopped what he was doing and straightened up to look at him. I won't address you that way often. Mo Ran's thick and long eyelashes drooped down, casting a small shadow on the side of his nose. Just occasionally, can't I? If you really think that's too much to ask, then forget it. Mo Ran looked more and more disappointed. If you really don't want me to address you that way, then I'll understand. In the end, Chu Wanning gave in. Probably because he was a lot older than Mo Ran and he couldn't resist the coaxing and pleading of someone younger who was acting like a spoiled child. He looked at the handsome man who smiled brilliantly after he nodded and suddenly felt that he had been deceived. Though he seemed to be always ferocious, baring his fangs and brandishing his claws. But in the end, he was always the one who compromised and gave in to Mo Ran. He was like a fish who had been going round and round in circles for so long that he finally got dizzy and bit the hook called Mo Ran. What should I call you? The hook asked. Chu Wanning stammered, It's up to you. How can you be that casual? This is a very important matter. Mo Ran racked his brains for a long time, but his mind was drawing blank. He was even feeling a little shameless and so he said, Bao Bei. Chu Wanning immediately thought of that dream and couldn't bear it. Don't. Chu Lang. Chu Wanning felt disgusted and asked with a gloomy face. Then do you want me to call you Ran Mei? Ha ha ha, that's not very good. Mo Ran scratched his head and laughed for a while. He then frowned and pondered some more. However, it seems he thought a bit too hard so what came up was still terrible. Chu Lang darling. After saying that, he couldn't bear it anymore. He held his forehead and felt a bit of despair. Seeing him like this, Chu Wanning couldn't help but laugh. Stop that. What's the point of thinking about it so hard? You're just making it more awkward. Mo Ran felt that what he said made sense, but he couldn't accept it. In the end, he smiled and said, All right, let me think carefully on it. I would definitely come up with the most suitable private name to address you in the future. After a pause, he pulled Chu Wanning over, who was standing at the side and reading a book. He held onto Chu Wanning and made him sit on his lap. He then gazed at him for a while. Chu Wanning got a little uneasy. What are you doing? Mo Ran sighed and muttered, No matter how many times I see you, I can't help it. What nonsense. Before he could finish speaking, his lips were covered. Mo Ran's warm and moist lips touched his, sweet and fragrant. Mo Ran hugged the person on his lap and the two kissed intimately on the chair. It was raining outside, and the sound of the rain covered the passionate sounds of their tongues intertwining together. When they separated, Chu Wanning slowly opened his moist eyes. He wanted to look at Mo Ran, but he didn't dare to. Mo Ran smiled. He knew that he was thin-skinned, so he couldn't help but hold him tighter in his arms. He caressed him as his heart beating wildly. Actually, I can call you my everything. N. It's nothing. Moran smiled. In the end, he only said, Shizun is the best. Chu Wanning leaned on his shoulder. This feeling was very sweet, but it also made him at a loss as to what to do. Sitting on Moran's lap, he could clearly feel that hard and hot thing. He felt like his brain was starting to burn. After a while, he said softly, Why are you? Cough, it's fine. I'll help you. After saying this, Chu Wanning's face was burning. Moran hurriedly said, No need, Shizun still has to go to the Council of Elders in a short while. Chu Wanning glanced at the hourglass. There's about a cup of tea's time left, it should. Moran said awkwardly, It wouldn't be enough. N. It can't be done in that short time. Chu Wanning was stunned for a moment. Before reacting, his face became even redder. He hurriedly got up from Moran's lap and took a step back. After he took a step back, he felt a bit annoyed. He probably felt that he was acting like a coward, so he took a step forward this time. Moran found it funny. He sat on the chair and did not try to hide it. Even though his clothes were covering it, his protruding desire still looked ferocious enough, as if it could take a person's life. I won't tease you anymore. In the end, Moran just grabbed his wrist. He originally wanted to pull him over and kiss his lips, but Chu Wanning's taste was so tempting. He was afraid that if he touched Chu Wanning that way, he wouldn't be able to control himself. So, in the end, he just held Chu Wanning's hand. He put the hand to his lips and looked at Chu Wanning. Then he lowered his eyelashes and kissed the hand reverently. However, in the end, he lightly licked the back of Chu Wanning's hand. Shizun, you're so sweet. The rain in Sichuan had been falling intermittently for half a month. Today, it finally cleared up and a good amount of sunshine could be seen. Moran sidestepped the deep and shallow puddles and walked in the bamboo forest. Morning cultivation resumed today, but Chu Wanning didn't come. He heard that he went to the back of the mountain to teach Elder Suanji's stupid disciples how to throw plum blossom darts. Before he reached the shooting range, he heard Chu Wanning's cold voice. Relax your hands. Hold the plum blossom darts between your index and ring fingers. Release your spiritual power from your fingertips and let it flow to the tip of your fingers. When the edges emit a golden light, throw it at the target. Shat. Just by listening to the sound, Moran knew that the disciples missed again. They all lamented. Heavens, it's really difficult. Elder, can you demonstrate it to us again? Chu Wanning said, when the golden light is emitted, the plum blossom darts will feel slightly hot. Feel it carefully, don't look at it with your eyes. How can you throw it accurately without looking? Before Chu Wanning could answer, he heard a laughing voice behind him. Of course, it can be thrown accurately. Chu Wanning turned around. Why are you here? The gathered disciples greeted, Mo Shikshan. Among them was a dainty and cute female disciple. When she saw Moran, she blushed and hurriedly cupped her hands. Moran didn't pay much attention to Elder Suanji's disciples. Instead, he went straight to Chu Wanning and said, Shizun, why don't you cover your eyes and show them how it is done? All right. After getting permission, Moran took off the snow blue hairband on his head. It was 3 fingers wide. He wrapped it around Chu Wanning's eyes. The hairband was tied tightly but not tightly enough to hurt. The silk felt like flowing water and the ends of the band fluttered slightly in the wind. Chu Wanning said, Hand me some plum blossom darts. One of Elder Suanji's disciples came forward and handed his plum blossom dart to Chu Wanning. Chu Wanning said, Give me 3. Huh. Although the disciple was puzzled, he still took out 2 more from his concealed weapon pouch and gave them to him. Chu Wanning's slender and cold white fingers rubbed the cold metal texture of the plum blossom dart. He pursed his lips and didn't say a word. He didn't tarry for long. With a flick of his finger, the darts flew out from between his fingers. Clang! 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 A series of buzzing sound rang out. Aya, it hit. Right at the middle of the target's heart. But there's only one. Chu Wanning didn't say anything, but Mo Ran said flatly, there are 2 more targets behind you. The disciples didn't believe him, but they all turned around to look and was promptly shocked. The other 2 plum blossom darts were embedded in the 2 targets behind them, one to the left and the other to the right. The targets were on opposite side, but both of them were hit by the darts right in the middle. In the rustling bamboo forest, the first rays of the morning sun flowed. Elder Suanji's disciples were so shocked that they couldn't utter a single word. Chu Wanning raised his hand and took off the blue ribbon covering his eyes. His phoenix eyes slightly opened and his eyelashes fluttered. He returned the ribbon to Mo Ran and said, the first sound just now was the sound of the 3 plum blossom darts colliding in the air. If you control your spiritual energy well, you can cause 2 of the darts to be repelled and fly in the opposite direction. During a battle, you can often catch your opponent off guard and gain the upper hand in this way. The disciples looked at each other. Suddenly, a young disciple shouted with a longing expression, Elder, how do we practice this? Is there a trick to it? Chu Wanning said, Mo Ran, let them see your hand. Mo Ran smiled and stretched out his hand. The young disciples gathered around, fighting to be in front to see what secret there was in Mo Ran's hand. In the end, after looking for a long time, they couldn't find anything. Instead, the cute female cultivator looked at him, her heart beating wildly and her eyes shining brightly. She and a few of her sisters had just entered the sect. Compared to older disciples, they were often restless and would frequently go to the foot of the mountain to buy some leisure reading materials. They had also privately read the reading material that Chu Wanning had read a while ago. When they read the size ranking of the young heroes of the cultivation world, the girls were all embarrassed and surprised. They laughed and joked around about it with each other. However, they also quietly discussed this matter in the disciples' room. I heard that the longer a man's fingers, the more majestic the size of that organ would be. A big-breasted and bold Shija said, next time, if I have the chance when we go to Menpo Hall to eat, I'll try to sneak behind Mo Shikshan and check out how big his hand is. In the end, that Shija really did attempted it. In order to get behind Mo Ran, she ran in a hurry and accidentally knocked over a soup bowl in her tray, splashing half of the hot soup on him. That Shija's mouth slightly opened as she was stunned and embarrassed. Just as she was at a loss at what to do, she saw a slender and well-proportioned hand take away her bowl, which was still dripping with hot soup, and put it back on the table. Then, a new bowl was placed in her tray. Don't knock it over again. It's not good to waste food. Hearing his deep and magnetic voice, that Shija didn't even dare to raise her head. Her face flushed red and her head was emitting steam just like the hot soup in the bowl. During the whole incident, she had only dared to secretly glance at Mo Ran. She checked out his waist, his strong lines, his wide chest, and of course, she looked at his hands the most. Exquisite. After she came back, she was full of praises, but they were the kind that could not be spoken in public. In the end, she could only come up with this word to describe it. At that time, all the shimei in the room couldn't say anything. They pursed their lips as their hearts became full of fanciful and wild fantasies. Suddenly, a cold voice interrupted her recollection. What can you see? A disciple said, Elder, please forgive this disciple. This disciple is slow-witted and really can't see anything. Another said, Mo Shikshan's hand seems to be especially strong. Everyone was talking at once, and when it was her turn, she blushed. In a moment of nervousness and blurted out, his fingers are very long. Mo Ran was stunned for a moment. He didn't know what they were looking at. He simply withdrew his hand, scratched his head and looked at Chu Wanning. Although Chu Wanning didn't know what long fingers represented, he wasn't a slow-witted person. He glanced at the female disciple's shy appearance and vaguely understood that whatever she was thinking, it couldn't be anything good. His face gradually darkened. He flicked his sleeve and coldly said, "What nonsense are you looking at?" Seeing that there was a hint of anger between his brows, the disciples jumped in fright and couldn't help but lower their heads. Moran felt the atmosphere become stiff. He didn't want Chu Wanning to be called unreasonable again. So, he smiled and took the initiative to point it out, "It's the calluses in my fingertips." After he said this, he glanced at Chu Wanning and said, "She's not going to make a fuss anymore. There is no trick. You need to keep doing it until the skin of the fingertip got broken. After repeatedly breaking the skin like this, calluses will form. After practicing again and again for 100 times, you will eventually be able to accurately control the spirit energy. There are no shortcuts." After practicing with them until noon, most of the disciples had roughly grasped the basics. Chu Wanning didn't stay any longer than that. It was one thing to give pointers to other elders' disciples, but if he did more than that, it might make Elder Suanji feel uncomfortable. Chu Wanning was no longer that 15 years old that had just left the mountain. He now has some understanding of how the world works. He and Moran walked out of the bamboo forest together and arrived at the Nahi Bridge. They walked very close together, side by side. Under their drooping sleeves, the backs of their hands would occasionally bump against each other. Their heads rubbed against each other until their hearts were numb and warm, like spring buds sprouting. Noticing that there was no one around, Moran finally reached out quietly and clasped Chu Wanning's fingers. Although they quickly let go, the tips of their ears got slightly red and their throats went hot and thirsty. Speaking of which, since that night in Vuchame town when they had been intimate with each other, the two of them had very few opportunities to be alone. The few times they were together behind the closed door of Red Lotus Pavilion, they would entangle with each other, but they could not go all the way for fear that Xue Zhenyang might suddenly show up for a visit. It has been too long ago that just the brief touch of their fingers just now was enough to make Moran's chest burn. He said softly, "Shizun, can we do it tonight?" Before he could finish his entreaty, a disciple suddenly rushed in front of them. Moran immediately straightened his tall body, pursed his lips and stood to the side without saying anything. That person didn't notice anything strange. When he reached them, he bowed and said, "Elder Yuhang, an urgent matter came up. The sect leader has asked you to go to Loyalty Hall immediately." Chu Wanning asked, "What's wrong?" "A guest has arrived with important news. It's related to Su Xuanglin." Sect leader Xue couldn't make up his mind alone, so he called on all the elders for a discussion. "You're the last one to be informed." When Chu Wanning heard Su Xuanglin's name, his amorous feeling immediately ground to a halt. He urgently rushed to Loyalty Hall. Moran followed closely behind and said, "Wait for me. I've fought with Su Xuanglin before. Maybe I can be of help." The two of them swiftly used their Qinggong skills and arrived in front of Loyalty Hall in mere moments. They pushed the door open and entered the hall. The whole place was silent. Aside from Xue Zhenyang and the elders, there were two people covered in blood standing in the main hall. Moran's gaze fell on the sword case on the back of one of them. He felt that it looked familiar. After a while, his eyes suddenly widened and his expression changed. Ye Wangzi. End chapter.